Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, Pure Devotional Service, text number 20. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So please repeat. Bile Batoru Kramavi Kramam Ye. Nashrinvata Karnapute Narasya. Jivasati Darduri Kevasuta. Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata. Bile Batoru Kramavi Kramamye. Nashrinvata Karnapute Narasya. Jivasati Dardurike Vasuta. Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata. Next.
Nashrinvata Karnapute Narasya.
Jivasati Dardurike Vasuta.
Jivasati Dardurike Vasuta.
Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata.
Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata.
Bile Batoru Krama Vikramanye.
Bile Batoru Krama Vikramanye.
Nashrinvata Karnapute Narasya.
Nashrinvata Karnapute Narasya.
Jivasati Dardurike Vasuta.
Jivasati Dardurike Vasuta.
Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata.
Nacho Pagayat Urugaya Gata.
Bila snake holes. Bata like. Urukrama the Lord who acts marvelously. You know this word, marvelous? Yeah. Vikramam, prowess. You know word prowess?
House.
Prowess.
Power.
Yeah, manliness, so to say. Yea, all these. Na, never. Shrinvata, heard. Karnapute, the ear holes. Narasya, of the man. Jiva, tongue. Asati, useless. Dardurika, of the frogs. Eva, exactly like that. Sutta, O Sutta Goswami. Na, never. Cha, also. Upagayati, chants loudly. Urugaya, worth singing. Gata, songs. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is, must be Shaunaka Rishi speaking, the spokesman of the sages there at Naimisharanya, since he's addressing Sutta Yeah. Just to be sure here. Right, Shaunaka Uvacha. So there's a series of verses here, all spoken by Shaunaka. So he's addressing Shukadeva Goswami like this. One who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes, and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Purport. Devotional service to the Lord is rendered by all limbs or parts of the body. It is the transcendental dynamic force of the spirit soul. Therefore, a devotee is engaged 100% in the service of the Lord. One can engage in devotional service when the senses of the body are purified in relation with the Lord, and one can render service to the Lord with the help of all the senses. This is a little different than Protestant Christianity, where the church is a very somber place, and everything very But here we have full engagement, senses, and hearing and song and form. It's nicely decorated altar with a flower arrangement, and it's a full engagement of the senses, 100%. Prabhupada says here. That's quite a claim, that we can be fully engaged.
There is a bit of a change in Christianity approach, at least in local places. I check my hometown, and in the church there is a group of people with instruments and accompanying, singing with instruments.
Right. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
unusual. When I was a kid, there was no such thing there.
Yeah. Of course, Christianity is a gigantic topic, and there's so many varieties. I was thinking specifically about Lutheranism, Lutheran Christianity, Protestantism. It's only by faith, But especially Roman Catholics, they can be quite ecstatic. There's many different varieties of religion. Also, the church is dynamic, changes. It's not just a static thing. Yeah. Yes, so Prabhupada, as such, the senses and the action of the senses are to be considered impure or materialistic as long as they are employed only in sense gratification. The purified senses are engaged not in sense gratification, but in the service of the Lord in toto, completely. The Lord is the supreme with all senses, and the servitor, who is part and parcel of the Lord, also has the same senses. Service to the Lord is the completely purified use of the senses, as described in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses, and thus there was a perfect exchange of sensible and logical understanding between the master and the disciple. Now here's Prabhupada coming with a barb here. Listen to this. Spiritual understanding is nothing like an electrical charge from the master to the disciple, as foolishly claimed by some propaganda mongers.
What is monger?
Monger, somebody speaking some advertising only, empty advertisement, false advertisement, propaganda monger. Yeah, here we have a barb against Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, because Ramakrishna, he actually was a Shakta, but somehow or other Vivekananda became famous as a Vedantist, or Niya Vedanta, Niya Advaita. He and based his teachings on the Shankaracharya's, 800 years after Christ, the impersonalist. But how that came about is mysterious, because his spiritual master was a worshiper of the goddess, and it doesn't really make sense. But here, Prabhupada is specifically aiming at their profile, where they publicly came out with this image that Ramakrishna had somehow or other laid his hands on Vivekananda or something, and he gave him all his power, and then Ramakrishna fell over crying because he's exhausted, and then Vivekananda became hardwired or something. It was like that's their propaganda, and people accept him as Paramahamsa Ramakrishna, and then Vivekananda, he went without an invitation actually to a big conference of world religions in Chicago in the early 1890s. And there he made a big splash, he impressed everybody about, Hinduism is Neo-Advaita, But Prabhupada goes on here to call this fairy tales, I think. Prabhupada goes on here. Everything is full of sense and logic, and the exchange of views between the master and the disciple is possible only when the reception is submissive and real. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one should receive the teachings of Lord Chaitanya with intellect and full senses, so that one can logically understand the great mission. Yeah. Prabhupada often quoted that verse that, if you want to use your intelligence, then apply your intelligence to the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, and you'll find it to be extremely wonderful. I was wondering what verse Prabhupada was thinking of in the Bhagavad Gita here, where he said, service to the Lord is completely purified use of senses as described in the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord imparted instructions with full senses, and Arjuna received them with full senses. Any suggestion what could Prabhupada be thinking of? One possible solution is that Krishna is simply addressed as Rishikesha, the master of Rishika, the senses. So Arjuna was encouraged by Krishna to not, depart from the battlefield and lay down his weapons and become a, charlatan.
Maybe he refers also to the fact that the entire Bhagavad Gita, that there was an actual sensible discussion, including, intellect and logic and reason, rather than just Krishna touching Arjuna with his hand and then.
Yeah, that would be consistent with Prabhupada's train of thought later on with, the Bhagavad Gita is definitely dialogue. It's not that Krishna just came in, gave a lecture and then, Arjuna just, Arjuna was asking a question, what's the symptom? But I don't understand, I can't do this, whatever, it was back and forth. It was a real, heartfelt, interpersonal, real exchange there. So yeah, that would fit well.
It was whatever you do, whatever you perform.
Yeah. Yad karoshi yad ashnasi yad johosi gasya. Yeah, that's Krishna's verse. Yeah. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, give away. And whatever austerities you may perform should be done as an offering unto me. Yeah, that's a good example. That's real hands-on verse. Okay, there's one more paragraph here. Prabhupada, in the pure state of living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord by hearing about him from Bhagavad Gita or Srimad-Bhagavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. Therefore, the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam should be preached all over the world very loudly. the internet may not be very loud, but it's. I think Prabhupada would include that here in his, volume here. Okay, Prabhupada. This is the duty. That is the duty of a pure devotee who has actually heard about them from the perfect sources. Many want to speak something to others, but because they are not trained to speak on the subject matter of the Vedic wisdom, they are all speaking nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. Play on words here, nonsense and no sense. Prabhupada, there are hundreds and thousands of sources for distributing mundane news of the world, and people of the world are also receiving it. Many times Prabhupada seems to indicate, a prophecy about, the forthcoming internet era.
I was on the subway the other day, and I just noticed everyone headphones and the screen in front of them. And when you said this, I thought maybe it's very loud, but they're all plugged in directly.
Yeah, right.
So you have no idea what worlds they are living in, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
In the old days, at least they read newspapers. Everybody newspapers. Now everyone read something.
Right. Okay. Everybody must speak loudly so they can hear. Yeah. People of the world are also receiving it. Similarly, people of the world should be taught how to hear the transcendental topics of the Lord, and the devotee of the Lord must speak loudly so that they can hear. The frogs loudly croak, with the result that they invite the snakes to eat them. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns and not for croaking like frogs. The word asati used in this verse is also significant. Asati means a woman who has become a prostitute. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue, which is given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns, will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense. Thus ends Prabhupada's purport to this 20th verse of the 3rd chapter of Srimad-Bhagavatam's 2nd canto. And the verse was this: one who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead, and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord, is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of a snake, and the tongue like the tongue of a frog. The Prabhupada has given this example many times. The frog, they croak there in the night, and they make a big tumultuous sound. But the result is that the snake can understand where the frog is in the dark and just comes and eats him. So
Why snake? I never saw a snake eating frog.
This is their,
You don't have
this is their food.
snakes.
Yeah.
In my country, the frogs, they're eating these big birds. They're croaking on this bird, the white, how do you call it? They just came, and they're eating frogs, but I never saw snake.
no, but the example from the standard example in the Shastra is, frogs eaten by snake. So we may not be able to observe it in our field investigation or something, but
You get the point, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
There's 6 things which are unfavorable for devotional service, right? One is over-collecting, first over-endeavoring. Over-collecting is first, and that results in over-endeavoring in order to get too much. Or to eat too much, that also requires too much endeavor. And then another one is prajalpa, to speak about things other than Krishna. That's the austerity of the tongue. Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that there's austerity of the mind, there's austerity of the body, and there's austerity of the tongue. And one of the austerities of the tongue is, of speech rather, the austerity of speech is to speak beneficially and to speak also with reference to the scriptures. Actually, a devotee Prabhupada claims that the disciple of a bona fide spiritual master is supposed to know everything. That's quite something. And what does that mean? Well, that means that he doesn't speak anything which he cannot refer to with an authoritative quote. A devotee will never say anything speculative. Like Prabhupada emphasized here in the purport that people, they speak their own opinion. But, what is the value? We're all dead and gone. Soon. We're all headed for the exit. Especially, you get above 40, 50, the water's up to here, it's just a little bit more and you're finished. We're all headed for the exit. So, what is the value of our opinion? But if the version of the scriptures, which is, been for thousands of years, people in all parts of the world have realized the eternal truth of the message of Godhead in the form of these scriptures. If we can do something to facilitate and propagate this message, then we've actually made a permanent contribution to the world that will survive this, mortal coil, which is here for a few days and gone tomorrow. So devotees, they are trained, like as Prabhupada mentioned here, to speak on the basis of authoritative scripture. The academics, they have a totally different process. Their process is research. And research means that you have to have, you have to relate yourself to a certain theory, and you have to, modify it a little or contribute to it. You have to find a new aspect or some, additional idea that, they consider this progress. And then gradually the old theories, they are, debunked, and then, a new theory will come. And like this, it's described in the Shastra to be Manaratena, the chariot of the mind. The mind is not steady. The mind is always sankalpa and vikalpa. You accept one thing and then turn around the next day and you reject the very same thing and then accept something else. So this is the business of the mind. But this is considered to have no value, actually. In contrast to a devotee, he is yasyasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate saraha. The devotee, on the other hand, he automatically develops all the good qualities of the demigods without having any separate endeavor because of his connection with the Supreme Absolute Truth, because of his devotion. Finally, I'd just like to wrap up here that Prabhupada, he gave a class on this verse, actually, and which is transcribed here on the Veda base. He gave it in Los Angeles in 1972. And I just had a little overview of what Prabhupada found important in this. Prabhupada devoted quite a lot of the lecture to defeating the impersonalists. Prabhupada begins like this. So the impersonalists are the voidists, so where is their God? So there's no God for them, impersonal. There's no activity, what they will hear, what they will chant. If you have no activity, then what shall I hear about you? If you are dead stone, then what can I hear? Simply a big stone, that's all. So Prabhupada went on, he was criticizing the impersonalists, but he also conceded that there is Shantaras there where Krishna is considered to be the supreme owner, or what does Prabhupada say? I'm sitting on a comfortable seat. This is Shantaras. The throne is giving me service in silence. So service, but without activity, that's admitted. That's a kind of non-active devotional service. And Prabhupada quoted Gita, Manmana Baba Mad Bhakto, and he quoted that knowledge and renunciation are automatically the result of devotional service. Jnana janayat yosu vairagyam jnanam chayata haitakam, from the second chapter of the Bhagavatam. And he spoke about the example here of the frogs. And then Prabhupada, he's very good at anamanapia, this poetic device of imitating the sound. So he was very good at imitating sounds. So Prabhupada imitated the sound of the frog here, and everybody was laughing. And then Prabhupada explained about the uselessness of speculation. Okay. It goes on like that, but I think we can stop here.